Identity represents the story that a group tells itself to organize its values and beliefs. A group's beliefs determines behavior. Collectively, its behavior affects student learning. This is a quote from Robert Dilts from 1994, and something that I quote in every one of my leadership workshops, because I truly believe a good leader is a good storyteller. And I didn't really have a lot to back this up until I met LeeAnne Lavender. And I got to learn more about how storytelling really influences and improves education. So I'm really lucky to be joined by LeeAnne. I've been very fortunate to work with her this past year as she's demonstrated how being a good storyteller weaves a narrative that connects her community so closely together in our peer sphere, peer learning communities. LeeAnne, I think where I'd really like to start today's conversation is getting a better understanding of, when did you realize stories were so important?
I love that story so much, or that question so much, Michael. And of course, it leads me to a story. So, I grew up in rural Ontario in Canada, and I lived way far away from any town and sort of out in a forest. And I loved being outside in the forest, and I also loved reading. And reading became for me such a way to construct so many worlds. And so I became an avid reader at a very, very young age, and then an avid storyteller at a very young age as well. And when I was actually a teenager, I started working for a local community newspaper and started telling other people's stories and learning about the power of being able to talk with someone, listen to their story, and then share it with the community in a way that created so many different outcomes that I hadn't even understood were possible. And so, in terms of when I first realized stories were important for influencing and motivating others, I think it came through that journalistic experience of realizing that when you put words on paper and you put those words out there in the world, that not only can that change one person's experience, but a lot of other people's experiences as well. And so that was the beginning of a journey with stories for me.
Great. And, when I first met you, you were just about to leave Concordia International School there in Shanghai. You were the service learning coordinator, global citizenship as well, as I believe. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about the roles you've had in international education and how being a good storyteller has helped you be a good leader.
Absolutely, yes. So when I became a teacher, which was a little later in life for me, when I first actually started my work career after university, my husband and I, we attended the same university here in Ontario. We actually started our own little publishing company, and we ran a little newspaper here for 10 years before we transitioned into teaching. So we were running this newspaper. It was a really fantastic endeavor. We enjoyed it so much. We were also raising our three young daughters at the time. So life was crazy and chaotic then because, when you're self employed, life is chaotic. And then you add three kids into the mix, and life is very chaotic. And our kids were attending this amazing little community school here in Ontario. And we were volunteering as well. And so we were spending a lot of time volunteering at the school, and we realized that we loved it so much. And one evening, we were sitting and chatting, and we said, oh my gosh, we're just enjoying being at the school. What would it be like to actually transition into teaching? And one thing led to another, and off we went. And so all of my years of teaching, I have been wearing two hats. One as a high school English teacher, kind of probably not a surprise given my love of stories and my love of literature, and the other hat as a service learning coordinator and coach. And I feel that the role of stories has been so powerful in both of those spheres. Again, no surprise that it's powerful when you teach English literature, but what's amazing about that is that you shine a spotlight on the power of narrative, right? When you're teaching English lit, and the transformation in students when they connect with stories is absolutely brilliant and amazing. And then what I was finding is that in my work with service learning and global citizenship, I was seeing that if I transferred a lot of that power of narrative into that work, that it was very transformative in that sphere as well. So it got me really thinking about how could we combine these things and what might it look like to bring the power of storytelling into that realm, but also into other realms of education as well. And so storytelling has helped me in all of those ways. And now I'm able to kind of put that together and help other teachers explore the possibilities of narrative and storytelling too.
Yeah, I think that's like probably the most important point there is how you're using storytelling to help others. Because as a coordinator, I can only imagine you didn't get to wield a lot of direct influence. And that's one of the problems that curriculum coordinators, any kind of coordinator, has in a school, because they don't really have a team that they get to supervise and tell what to do. They have to try to motivate and influence them as best they can. And I personally see storytelling as probably one of those most effective tools. So if you were to have any sort of suggestions for coordinators or any other educational leaders out there, how they might be able to use storytelling, what would come to mind as some useful examples of how to use it for leadership?
Oh my goodness. Okay, I have so many examples. And Michael, before I share the examples, can I share a little bit of backstory about
Yeah.
storytelling? So there's so much amazing brain science about storytelling and what happens in our brains when we encounter stories, right? And I should qualify this by saying that a lot of times people will think about storytelling simply as something that involves like fictional stories, like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to like read a picture book to a young child, or I'm going to do something with, fiction or poetry if I'm an English language teacher. And of course, storytelling is involved in all of those things. But when I talk about storytelling in education, it's so much more. So it's about the ways that we allow our students to actually hear and listen to the stories of real people in our communities or in global contexts as well. It's about how we allow our students to create stories. And again, not just, fictional stories, but nonfiction stories. How do they tell the story of their own learning? How do they tell the story of other people that they've encountered? What about community partners in our service learning programs? So all of those different ways. And the brain is amazing because when we encounter stories, our brain does so many different things. It produces so many chemicals. So we're talking about cortisol and oxytocin and dopamine. And our brains do this crazy thing as well, where we can actually have mirror neurons. So like if I'm telling a story and you're listening to me, your neurons in your brain start to actually mirror mine. Like our brains get in sync. It's
Wow.
absolutely crazy cool. So all of these things happen and more when we're looking at stories in the brain. And so I'm really excited by all of that because when I think about brain-based learning and what storytelling can give us across all disciplines and for all ages of learners, there is so much to explore. So that all being said, when we think about brain science and storytelling, if I think about leaders, oh, there's so many ways that we can use stories. So if I'm a leader of a team, let's say I am a curriculum coordinator, or maybe I'm an instructional coach or a middle leader or a school leader in some other capacity, I can use stories to help motivate my team. I can use stories to help inspire my team towards any kind of common goals that we may have and strategies that we might want to implement. And I can use stories to also encourage my team in terms of positivity and teamwork and camaraderie and culture. I can also use stories to build culture in terms of celebrating what we're doing. So if I take the successes of the team and I share them out in the community, I start to really begin to shift the narrative of what's important and what we value in our school, right? So, how do you do that? You think about the story as a hero's journey. So, most people listening may remember the hero's journey from way back in grade 9 English, right? So, if you're not an English language teacher, language arts teacher, and you haven't encountered it for a while, there's like 5 stages to the hero's journey, right? The hero has to have a call to adventure. They have to have a road of trials. They have to have a climax where something major happens and there's a point of no return. Then they have a little bit of falling action and then they have the resolution. So all stories have this. And who is the hero of the story? If you're an educational leader and maybe you've got a team that you're working with. So if you're a curriculum coach or coordinator, who are your teachers that are part of your core team? Are they the heroes of your story? And if they are, what is the main challenge that they're facing? And how can you be that guide? Because a hero's journey has a guide. It's often a divine guide, so you can put yourself into that role. But how do you come alongside your heroes and say, I'm here to help you, right? You're the hero of the story, but I'm here to help you. And what can I do to get you to that goal that you are trying to achieve? If you're a classroom teacher, the heroes of your story are your students, and you're doing exactly the same thing. So, how can you think about, all right, with all of that being said, how can I imagine the goals of my team, and how can now I approach those goals in a more narrative fashion so my team knows that I realize they're the hero and that I'm their guide and I'm here to help them? And we can all kind of celebrate that as we build camaraderie, we build the culture, and we celebrate the successes, and we get people on board. You know, you can't order people to be more motivated or created, but you can lead them in that direction through a beautiful narrative arc. So that would be some of the main suggestions that would be coming to my mind.
Wow, that's incredibly helpful. It's a great example. And to be honest with you, when I think about the hero's journey, I'd love to see more examples of it. Where would you suggest our audience today to go to find out more about you and your work, and specifically how they can learn how to better narrate the hero's journey?
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for asking that. So, my work is now, I was a classroom educator for so many years. And a couple of years ago, like so many people, COVID kind of changed some things for me. And so I repatriated back to Canada in June of 2021. And so, for the last couple of years, I've been working independently in this realm. So, I do consulting and coaching and facilitation around these very things: storytelling, service learning, and global citizenship. And you can find me through my website, which is very easy to remember because it's my name. It's just LeeAnneLavender.com. And also on LinkedIn and on Twitter, same thing. Just search up my name, LeeAnne Lavender. And I'd love to connect with people there. I run some courses in these topics and themes. And there's some amazing organizations worldwide doing incredible stuff in this realm. So I love, UNESCO has this incredible story circles protocol that I use quite a lot in my work because it's really amazing for deep listening, and deep compassionate listening for intercultural understanding. And you can use it in so many different ways. Narrative 4 is another organization that does a ton of amazing stuff. StoryCorps is another one. So lots of amazing organizations are doing work in the narrative realm, particularly for educators. And if anybody wants some specific advice on that, just please reach out by email. Again, it's just LeeAnne at LeeAnneLavender.com. And I would be so happy to point you in whatever direction would be helpful.
Well, I barely feel like we skimmed the surface, because as you were mentioning all those other resources that people could go to, I started thinking, hey, storytelling for restorative justice, and storytelling for cultural communications, and storytelling for, I mean, we're going to have to talk again, LeeAnne. I just want to thank you again for the time you spent with us today. And next time we'll go deeper, maybe into some other area, like even restorative justice.
I would love that so much. And yes, yes, yes. I've already got some things where I'm like twinging, like, yes, we could do this, we could do that. So Michael, that would be amazing.
Awesome. Have a great evening, LeeAnne. Thank you again.
Thank you.